The last time I spoke on this podcast, I said that the Giants game versus the Washington Commanders would go a long way into telling us what this season would look like. Well, the game has gone and went. We kind of have some answers. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, and I have a giant issue.
3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Giant Issue. I am Coach Gene Clemens. New York Giants on SI. That's where you find all of our New York Giants news and information, the latest updates, like who are they going to bring in to kick, things of that nature. You definitely don't want to miss anything that's going on over there at the New York Giants on SI. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, New York Giants on SI. Make sure that you follow me anywhere that you get your social media, at Gene Clemens, somewhere right around here, right? And then if you want to, holler at the YouTube channel, Coach Gene Clemens YouTube. I watched this game with the thought process that, okay, the New York Giants always seem to have a good game plan for the Washington Commanders. It's not just that the Commanders aren't very good, because in many people's thought process, the Giants haven't been really good, right? So it's not just that the Commanders aren't very good, because I think they have talent over there. It's just that for some reason, and I think this also goes to the way in which the Giants have played versus Philly at times, and the way they've played versus the Cowboys at times. Two teams that are supposed to be far superior, they've played close, right? And then in the case of the Washington Commanders, a team that's supposed to be either at the same level of talent and or organizational structure, they've been able to have success against. So I went in saying, hey, this is going to be a bounce back game for Daniel Jones. I went in saying we were going to see an emphasis on getting the ball to Malik Neighbors. You were going to see this, this pass rush and the ability to get pressure on the quarterback improve. And we saw all of those things. The problem is that we didn't see them enough. We didn't see it enough, and we didn't see it at critical times, right? We didn't see it enough, and we did not see it at critical times. I want to first start with this, right? I don't know why it is people outside of myself and maybe a few others have so much difficulty pointing the finger at the general manager, right? I heard the exchange between Brian Daboll and the media member who asked him about his job security. I saw the long stare, and while I don't agree with the staring somebody down as if you're going to do something, come on, Brian Daboll. Like, who the hell are you scaring? Like, Brian Daboll's not. If anybody's going to be afraid of a coach, it's not going to be being afraid of Brian Daboll. I don't know if any of y'all have seen him in person. Even with him slimming down, he does not look like a physical, imposing person. If he were to look at me like that, I would have looked at him like he was food. Like, bro, I will eat you. Like, you're not on my level with that. So I don't know why he did that. I don't agree with that. I thought that was corny. But I also didn't really like the question, right? Like, why is that important right now? John Mara's not going to walk in there and fire him. When was the last time John Mara fired a coach in the middle of the year or at the beginning of the year? Like, when was the last time that a coach was not able to finish out his run with the Giants? At these press conferences where you have limited amounts of time to ask questions, at these press conferences where there are pertinent information from the game and from and what you want to see going forward for the next game and the immediate future, right? The immediate future. Why are we asking questions like that, right? To me, that's somebody that's looking to get a viral moment. That's someone that's looking to get a visceral moment that can then turn into viral. That's someone that's looking to be made into a victim. I don't know why, right? I don't agree with a lot of the media people that be out here. Like, I used to think that that a lot of these things were fraternal, right? I'm a football coach. So I believe that the profession is fraternal, right? If you're a football coach, then it's a brotherhood, and you should have love and respect for every coach at every level because they do what you do, regardless, right? I've always felt that way. I also believe that after my many years in the coaching industry, there are some coaches that don't like respect the profession. I feel that same way about teachers. You know, I've taught for years, and I feel like as a teacher, you should have love and respect and admiration and understanding of the craft and what goes into it, and all of the things that's necessary in order to be a good teacher, right? And over the years, I found out it's not always that way. People don't all look at it the way I do. But there's no other place that I have been more disappointed in the behavior and the actions and how people comport themselves than in the media. Where when I went to journalism school, I was taught that, especially if you were on a beat, if you were somebody, and this is what you had to comport yourself in a manner where the coaches respected you, right? The people that you were talking to respected you. They understood the job to do, but you also respected them, and you kept the questioning in line with what made sense, right? With what made sense in the framework of the design of the day, of the week, of the practice. You didn't just go out and try to get headlines or clicks or visceral moments. And what I have seen from media members, people who are there with a microphone that are there to try to interview, I've seen them waste questioning on stuff that didn't actually like advance the purpose, or didn't actually allow them to allow somebody to get the information they needed from that particular game. I've watched them ask questions that were accusatory. I've seen them not even ask questions, just make statements, and based off that statement, wait for the coach to respond. And then when the coach responds in a way that's not what they were looking for, they use that as a means to attack. And this is why we get coach speak. This is why we get people who don't give you information. This is why you get a Bill Belichick. And so Bill Belichick would give you the answer that was just a boring, nope, not going to give you any bulletin board material. And so then they started making fun of Bill Belichick for it. They started to say Bill Belichick was dodging questions. They tried to make him into a villain anyway. So you were damned if you do, you were damned if you don't. But all the while you're doing this, you're wasting the time of the other reporters who have deadlines, or they want to get their material out there, because we know if you get it out there first, you have a better chance of it sticking, of it being relevant longer than just a minute. And you're wasting those times, but nobody cares anymore because there's no honor amongst journalism, amongst journalists anymore. There's no journalists. Journalists aren't just asking questions that they think would be good to know. They're simply asking only their one question that serves them and serves them only, and it does not serve the greater good. The journalist used to be there to provide information for the people, and now the journalist is there to be seen. Right? That's what podcasts are supposed to be for. That's what editorials are supposed to be for. When you're at the press conference, it's not look at me, listen to me. It's let me ask this question to further the conversation for everyone. I take pride in the fact that when I ask a question at an interview, I'm asking a question that might give information to others there that they never even thought about. I want to ask a question that makes the coach think, that's a good question, or that's an interesting question, and who asked it? Because that's how I start to build the relationship with the coach. So watching all of that unfold was bad, and so I was thinking about it, right? Because y'all know I have a lot of smoke for Joe Schoen. I respect the fact that he's in the position he's in, but I just don't believe he's done a good job. And I don't know why he continues to skate on these things, but I'm starting to believe that he's not skating. But it was really interesting. I'm trying to remember who it was. I was talking about it, and he corrected me, and I want to give credit to Ray Harris. Shout out to Ray Harris at Coach Ray 3232. He said, if we all don't see Daboll as the worst at roster and injury management, I don't know what to tell you. And I was giving Dave's a little bit of like, grace. I said it's not the coach, because I really don't believe it's Daboll, right? I don't. But here's what I do know. Everybody fed us the Daboll and Schoen are in lockstep. And that's what he reminded me of, right? He said, they told me coach and GM in lockstep. And I had to go, you right. Right? I had to go, you right. Because when they hired Joe Schoen and Daboll, it was a package deal that both came from Buffalo, because they said, hey, here's the young GM that's really going to be good. And here's the young coach that was an innovator that got the best out of Josh Allen. Right? That's what they told us. So I can't give Brian Daboll the pass, because in my brain, when Joe Schoen says, hey, we're going to pay Daniel Jones, we're not going to let him go into the open market, we're going to pay him $40 million, it should have been Brian Daboll going, no, we're not doing that. I'm not attaching my career to him. Just for the sake of looking at it. And I know that the Carolina Panthers are not good, right? But it was just announced that Dave Canales is benching Bryce Young. Benching him not for a good quarterback. He's benching him for the Red Rocket, right? He's benching him for a guy who's been a journeyman in the last 8 years. But you want to know what Dave Canales decided? I'm not going to have my career attached to this guy that I had nothing to do with bringing in. Do I agree with it? No. Do I think it's right? No. But do I say at least he is saying I'm going to take ownership of it, and whatever happens is going to be because of the decisions I make, not the decisions that a regime that got fired made for me. So it begs the question. If Daboll should be separated from them, which I used to think from Shane, then why is he not standing up and going, I'm not rocking with this. I'm not rocking with you giving me this quarterback that I got to figure out how to design stuff for, because he can't play the position at the level that I need him to play it at. I'm not rocking with you getting rid of this running back who's one of the best running backs in the league. And even though my running back ran really well this past game, and shout out to Devin Singletary, nobody's going to convince me that if you put Saquon Barkley behind that improved offensive line, that he doesn't go for 200 plus yesterday. Sorry. I'm not believing it. I'm not buying it. We saw what he did. And we're going to see it again tonight, Monday Night Football. If Brian Daboll has an ability to be adversarial with the GM, if they're not in lockstep, then why did they get rid of all of these defensive players that could have helped them stop the run yesterday? Because they couldn't stop Water from running yesterday. I looked at all of these stats and all of these guys with all of these tackles, and then I went back and looked at the game. And I said, man, how many tackles are people making beyond what I would call a successful tackle? Beyond what I would call a legitimate tackle. Because any tackle made more than 3 yards down the field is not a quality tackle. Not when you play linebacker. Not when you play defensive line, because that means they had to get by you in order for you to tackle them. It's all bad, ladies and gentlemen. It's all bad. It's the greatest time of the year again. Football is back, and it's here to stay till February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats. Touchdowns, passing yards, you get it. I'm an Underdog guy, right? Like I use Underdog all the time. I like to go in and see what all of the Giants numbers are, like what Daniel Jones is, what's his total yards and whether I'm going higher or lower, on that or how many touchdowns, is it 1, is it 1.5? I'm always looking for those higher or lower, especially in the Giants game. I think it makes the game more interesting. And if your team's not doing so good, it's a great way to stay involved in the game and rooting for the players on your team, even when the team isn't doing that very well. Make picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code NYSI, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code NYSI to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. It's void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. AZ 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text Next Step to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY or 467-369 if you have any issues. That is Underdog Fantasy. Make sure that you are going there and checking it out. Now, back to what we were talking about before. I look at this from the standpoint of offensively, what did we see that makes us feel good about things, right? Well, Daniel Jones played a better game. Again, was it a good enough game? No. But was it better? Absolutely, yes. We saw what we wanted to see. Malik Neighbors has number 1 wide receiver ability. Now, can he become go-to in the clutch ability? And I'll tell you what I mean, because this goes back to the issue that I have with the GM and the head coach. You guys knew that Graham Gano wasn't healthy. You knew that he wasn't 100%. You've seen this play before. Graham Gano got hurt last year in the offseason, right? Where was the legitimate competition for Graham Gano? I mean, it's not like he's a 28-year-old in the prime. He's old. It's not his fault. He's going to get injured. So there's nothing there for legitimate competition for Graham Gano. Then he gets on the injured. You knew he was injured on Friday. You don't bring in a guy on Saturday. Just bring in a guy because you can't take a chance, right? And I contend that missing those field goals, all three of them, by the way, because you only gave Jamie Gillen one chance. He missed it, and then you went for two after that. Here's the problem. So you don't bring a kicker in, and by not bringing a kicker in, you have to be comfortable that Jamie Gillen can kick extra points, not field goals, extra points. That should be the bar. Hey, if our starting kicker gets hurt, can our backup kicker kick an extra point? It should always be yes. I have a kid playing for my high school team who has never played football before. Never. He's never played football before. Before 2 weeks ago, he's never seen football. He kicked an extra point in our varsity game. He's been playing football for 2 weeks. He kicked an extra point and made it in our varsity game. Why can Jamie Gillen not kick and make an extra point? It's not like the field goal is further in the NFL than it is in high school. The uprights are narrower, right? But he's a professional. Maybe he was just nervous. So then you don't give him another chance. You go for two. But, right, this is where I need to know if Malik Neighbors is just going to be a number one wide receiver or if he's going to be a go-to in the clutch when I need it wide receiver. Because there's no way in my mind that I'm running a play that does not involve trying to get him the ball when I'm down there. If you remember back when the Aaron Rodgers heyday, him and Devontae Adams, it used to be that back shoulder throw. Greg Jennings, he did it with as well, I believe. Maybe even a little Donald Driver action. Down, they used to get close to the line, close to the end zone, and it would just be throw the back shoulder fade. Nobody could guard it. Nobody could defend it. It was automatic. What's the automatic that goes to Malik Neighbors that you can guarantee we're going to pick up 3 to 5 yards? And why is there not one? Because the head coach is the offensive coordinator now. So we don't have to play the game of what would Daboll do. We saw what he did. We saw him make the choice not to kick field goals, not to kick extra points after his backup kicker missed the first extra point he's probably attempted in God knows how long, right? Like that's the first one he attempted in God knows how long. So I don't understand why we're not allowed to criticize or we're not allowed to say, hey, I don't know. But going into a game where your kicker is hurt and thinking your kicker is going to hold up and not having a legitimate contingency plan in place is faulty. Not putting competition in front of your kicker, just like you really didn't put any competition in front of your quarterback, is faulty. That is GM and coach lockstep. They're supposed to be on the same page. So clearly, both of these guys had the same thought process. But it went back to bite them in the butt. Once again, how many times is this team going to be the cause of their own demise? I remind you all that Brian Daboll hired this defensive coordinator because he said he could stop the run. He hired this defensive coordinator because he said he could stop the run. And then all offseason, they were supposedly making moves to be able to do what? Get more pressure on the quarterback with 4. But go and look at the stats. Go and look at the stats from the game. Because in week 1, only the defensive tackle got pressure on the quarterback and brought him down. Right? In week 1. But in week 2, In week 2, the Giants defense, what were they able to do? Right? In week 2, the Giants defense, I believe, accounted for 1 sack. I'm looking up the stats right now. 1 sack that came from a defensive lineman? Nope. I digress. 0 sacks came from the defensive lineman. They had 2 sacks from Pinnock. They had 1 sack from Phillips, 1 sack from McFadden, and 1 sack from Bobby Okereke. They did not have a sack from a defensive lineman, and they had 5 sacks in the game. So if the plan was to get pressure with 4, right, but then also be able to stop the run, fail on one, fail on the other. And you want to know how I know it's a fail? Andrew Phillips had 12 tackles. 7 of them were solo. Jason Pinnock had 9 tackles. 8 of them were solo. McFadden had 13 tackles. 7 of them were solo. And Okereke had 8 tackles. 4 of them were solo. What does that tell me? It's a lot of tackles being made in the plus territory. There's a lot of tackles being made where there should be like pass catches and stuff like that. Why? Because they're running all over the place. And don't give me, oh, well, that's because of the quarterback. Jayden Daniels had 44 yards. I believe he had 80-something yards last week. But Brian Robinson, and I predicted this, Brian Robinson had 17 carries for 133 yards. And before you tell me that that was mainly one play, right? Before you try to give them the you know what I'm saying, the reprieve, when you take that 40-yard play away, the 16 carries for 93 yards is still 5.8 yards a carry. He averaged 7.8 yards a carry, and without the 40-yard run, it's 16 carries, 93 yards. That's still not good. Austin Eckler ran for 4.8 yards a carry. He had 8 carries for 38 yards. Brian Robinson, without the 40-yard gain, would have essentially had Devin Singletary's day. Right? He would have essentially had the day that Devin Singletary had. And I am 100% cool with saying that the Washington Commanders were not happy that they gave up 95 yards on 16 carries to Devin Singletary. So why should I be happy about the Giants giving up this much rushing yards when you told me that this guy was supposed to come in and stop the run? That's what y'all told me. That's what the head coach said when he brought the name to Joe Shane. He said, let's stop the run around here. Need I remind you, Aaron Jones, 14 carries for 94 yards. That was last week. That wasn't good enough. And now another team that nobody thinks is supposed to be really good was able to run the ball on the Giants once again. It don't look good. I'll tell you what, though. Malik Neighbors looks good. He's a giant building block. Right? Drew Phillips looks damn good. He's a giant building block. The offensive line looks improved. It can't be a building block because some of those guys on the offensive line won't be here in 2 years. But, right, there are some pieces. Wandale getting in the end zone. He's a building block. Right? Like, There are positives to take away from this game. There's just not enough of them to feel good about it. That's all. There's not enough positives to feel good that, okay, yeah, we didn't beat them, but we'll beat somebody else. Right? And tomorrow we'll take a look at, our next opponent and the schedule that's coming up, because it doesn't look good for the G-men. There's going to have to be something that drastically changes if this team wants to start winning games. And you know what it starts with? It starts with getting more touchdowns and having a kicker that can make it through a game. Target share, by the way, I thought this was interesting. Target share. Malik Neighbors got 18 targets this week. I told you guys that I thought Malik Neighbors would get much more targets this week than he did last week, and he did. 18 targets. Darius Slayton got 4. Wan'Dale Robinson got 4. Jalen Hyatt, once again, a no-show. And I don't think it's on Jalen Hyatt. I think this is on the offensive coordinator, but maybe it's on Jalen Hyatt. I don't know. We'll talk about it tomorrow for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. As always, New York Giants on SI. Make sure you go there for all of your New York Giants news and information. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, we greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I am Coach Gene Clemens, and I have a giant issue.